Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Fantasy Baseball. I'm John Cook, joined as always by my co host, Patrick Fitzgerald. In today's episode, we're going to go over the news and notes around baseball, cover player performances from this past week, and give some stream recommendations at the end of the show. Before we get into all of that, Patrick, how are you doing?
Hey John, I'm doing pretty well. I have an eye on this Orioles Yankees game as we're recording here, trying to prevent the sweep and keep stay in the wild card race a little bit. Race seems like a generous term at this point. It feels more like a slow jog. No American League team wants to even get over above 500 to get the third spot, but as long as you're playing meaningful games, it's still fun. So yeah, how are you?
I'm doing all right. My Twins somehow swept Atlanta earlier this week, and they are currently, or at least they were yesterday, were occupying that third wild card spot. But they're also like 2 games below 500, so it's one of those just, well, this isn't a good team, but hey, we're currently in the playoffs as it stands. Yeah, it's kind of weird, but all, at the same time, kind of funny as well.
Yeah, I believe it'd be first time ever that a below 500 team will make the playoffs if it happens this year. Obviously, it makes sense given the expanded format that something like that might be on the verge of happening. But yeah, I guess it'd be a funny, funny anecdote in a few years. So yeah, if you make it, you just I think enjoy it and expect very little, just because the top teams is definitely better. But it'd be fun to make it.
Yeah, I'm curious how it's gonna work out because I think as it stands right now, the White Sox are technically the second best division winner. So if the standings stay where they are right now, um, we could be playing the White Sox in the playoffs, which I don't know. That'd be kind of a weird matchup. Not gonna lie, and it would be really annoying for whoever has to face either the Yankees or Boston, because yeah, you're basically facing the second or third best team right now in the American League. So pretty
Yeah,
unfortunate there.
yeah, anything can happen in those short series, that's for sure.
Yeah. All right. In I guess in fantasy news, it is kind of coming to the end of the season, or we're coming about a month to the end of the season. Any updates on your leagues around there and how you're doing?
Yeah, pretty well overall. I have a big 2 weeks coming up in my home league. I'm like, right, I don't think I'm one game out of the playoffs and made some buys at the deadline. So not going all in, but making some aggressive moves. So if I can, beat these two out of the playoff teams, then I hopefully sneak my way into the playoffs, which should be fun. And then yeah, my NFBC leagues, I think I'm top half in all of them. Maybe one or two. I'm trying to get first place, which would be my first time winning an FBC league. So that'd be pretty cool. But yeah, just trying to finish strong into the playoffs and those head-to-head ones, and then just keep stacking stats in those roto ones. This can come down to the last day sometimes. So yeah, you just got to stay on top of it.
Yeah, I'm doing kind of okay in my dynasty leagues. Weirdly enough, in all my redraft leagues, it has not been going well. But sometimes that's just kind of down to draft strategy and me really liking Vlad a little too much in all my leagues. So I guess I deserve it. Anyways, before we get into the rest of the episode, just a reminder that you can follow our podcast on Twitter at ThisWeekPL. You can send us your fantasy baseball questions to our email at thisweekplpod@gmail.com. Lastly, make sure you subscribe to or follow the podcast on whatever streaming platform you listen to. We're on all of them: Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Leave a 5-star review if you enjoy the show. All right, we are going to move into injury news and notes. And this late into the season, there's still a bunch of names going on the injury list, coming off the injury list, some updates as well from guys. So, still important to keep track of what is happening in the injury space. In terms of placements, Hunter Goodman going on the injury list with a left shoulder strain. Max Fried going back on the injury list with a bone bruise in his elbow. Jorge Blanco, probably not on many fantasy teams, but he is pretty much going to be out for season, getting ankle surgery. Tyler Soderstrom, who unfortunately is kind of joining this long list of really solid A's bats that are hitting the injuries. He's undergoing season-ending left hip surgery. And then Edwin Diaz, who basically has not had a great season, or just maybe really even a couple weeks since he's returned from the injury list. He's going back onto the injury list with neck inflammation. So yeah, pretty unfortunate there for Hunter Goodman, who pretty much was like catcher one or catcher two at this point. Max Fried, obviously a really big name to hit the deck, and then Edwin Diaz. That one's just a weird one because he was probably everywhere, but most managers didn't really like having him on their teams probably for the last couple weeks.
Yeah, the saga continues there with Diaz. Obviously the Dodgers are just trying to get him right for the playoffs, but Tanner Scott, big saves acquisition down the stretch here. Make sure you scoop him up if he was dropped when Diaz returned in some of your leagues. And yeah, Goodman is unfortunate. Had to throw him on the IL in the league, which was a huge bummer. And Fried, the Yankees, they have a great rotation, but they can't seem to get all five guys healthy at once. Rodon came back to replace Fried, which is nice, but seems like maybe short term for Fried, so they could be at full strength soon.
Yeah. Yeah, bone bruise should, hopefully it's more just a rest thing for him rather than anything serious. In terms of returns from the injury list, Miguel Garcia, he came back from a hand injury, but unfortunately he left today's game with a hamstring injury, so he's probably going back on the injury list. Edward Cabrera also came back, and then now he's back on the injury list with a blister, which I think he's kind of been dealing with. Um, I can't remember why he was on the injury list in the first place, but it feels like Cabrera always has some random blister issues. Vinny P back. I believe he hit a homer in one of his first games back from the injury list. Carlos Rodon returned on Tuesday. 4 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, and 4 strikeouts. So a fine start. Nothing incredible, but good to see from Rodon nonetheless. O'Neill Cruz, home run and stolen bases in his first couple of games back. So nice to see him basically get back on track in his return. Cody Bellinger could return for the Yankees on Sunday. That has not been official yet. Daniel Palencia expected to be activated on Friday for the Cubs. Be nice to have him back as their closer. Samuel Basillo returned Wednesday for the Orioles, so he is now fully entrenched as the main catcher in on that team. Cooper Pratt of the Brewers, he returned Wednesday, starting shortstop, pushing Jorge Ortiz to third base. Jeffrey Springs back for the A's, 5.2 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs, 3 walks, and 1 strikeout. So kind of a start that was not great for fantasy reasons, I guess. I think it was a no decision as well. And then Tyler Glasnow also returning next week for the Dodgers, so they get even more ammunition for their rotation, as if they need more stellar pitchers in that group.
Yeah, the rich definitely getting richer there. And yeah, a couple of Simpsons memes walking into the bar, walking right back out of Michael Garcia and Edward Cabrera. I had both of them in at least one league, so needless to say, I did not get much out of them.
Yeah, that's super unfortunate with both those guys. I mean, Michael Garcia, it's actually been uh, really unfortunate to see him, fully the last year of the breakout season, drafted pretty highly as a third baseman this year, and it's just been more or less a lost season for him. Kind of unfortunate to see.
Yeah.
In terms of some other injury news, Garrett Crochet, he's planning to return this season, but as a reliever. The Red Sox have plenty of starters actually at this point, so this could be an interesting return for Crochet, who notoriously didn't want to relieve games while he was in Chicago, but now it looks like he might end up being a really solid pitcher, kind of maybe bridging the gap between the starters and Aroldis Chapman in the playoffs. Joe Ryan threw his first bullpen session earlier this week. Still probably will be some time before he returns from his glute issue. Carlos Correa originally was thought he was going to be out for season. He had some, I think it was a surgery for a tendon, but it looks like he could be back before the end of the season. He's like doing baseball drills and all that. So even though he has maybe some limited value in fantasy, maybe Carlos Correa is someone you need to pick up in a deeper league. Shohei Ohtani, who of course is batting and doing fine there, but the pitching wise, still dealing with a knee issue. He threw a 45 pitch BP session earlier this week, so could potentially move up to live batting practice, or potentially a rehab game. We'll see how the Dodgers want to approach him. And then Griffin Jacks getting a rehab start this weekend after going on the injured list 2 weeks ago. So hopefully he'll be back soon for the Rays. And then some other news: Ketel Marte dealing with some knee issues, but also just not present with the team. So that's kind of unfortunate. I don't think he's been officially put on IL. So this is kind of tough in terms of your roster construction. Kate Anderson is going to be making his debut for the Mariners after after a couple weeks of just wondering, hey, is this guy coming up? He is now coming up, and he is going to be starting on Friday, I believe. So by the time that this episode comes out, you'll probably know how he did. And then in terms of promotions, Joshua Baez, we'll talk about his start in a little bit. Zach Veen, we mentioned last week, he is doing a really good job in Colorado right now. And then AJ Smith-Shawver, just kind of trailing up and down between AAA and the majors, but he is now back in the majors for Atlanta.
Yeah, it was another disappointing start for Smith Shawver, unfortunately. Not sure if he's going to stick in the rotation there. And Veen is doing well. He's got a couple homers, but I think he is mostly platooning, so that hurts him a little bit. And yeah, Baez and Anderson, they're obviously going to get, Baez already got all the fab dollars. And for people who didn't win Baez, Cade Anderson is going to be the big target this week. That's for sure. I'm definitely preparing some bids in leagues where I need pitching. So it's exciting that Seattle is finally giving him the chance. Feels like maybe they could have used him a couple weeks ago, but better late than never.
Yeah, and it's also important to note, I mean, he's basically going straight from Double A to the majors, which is not unheard of for sure. And it doesn't mean that he's not ready for this. Um, it's just interesting that he has not had too many appearances against older batters, but nonetheless, I think he'll be fine in his debut in the majors.
Yeah, he's only ever played at Double A and only this season because last year he got shut down after being drafted. So it's kind of funny. I wonder if there's ever been any other player that's only played in Double A and then got promoted to the majors. But yeah, pretty high expectations for him. But still, you never know how someone's going to acclimate to the big leagues.
Right. All right. Well, that wraps it up for injury news and notes. We're going to move on to player performances, starting with the 14th.
Yeah, so on the 14th, our hitter recap was done by Ryan Clark with the McValue Neal for Jeff McNeil, who's been heating up for the A's. But I'm going to be talking about a more young, promising guy who's had a great season, just been lights out all year. That's Miguel Vargas. First base, third base eligible, most spots. Obviously, the White Sox. He was 4 for 5 with a double, 2 homers, 3 runs, and 3 RBIs. And Ryan feels like Vargas might be the most underrated player in the league right now. He's basically doing everything you want from a hitter. He has great plate discipline. He doesn't chase, but he's super aggressive in the zone. Has showcased great power this year. Pulls a ton of fly balls in the air in order to maximize that power. And all of it's kind of added up to just a fantastic breakout season. Ryan feels like he's going to build on this one and be even better next year. But yeah, this year Vargas, it's been pretty exceptional. Even without a step forward, I think you'd be ecstatic. He's on pace for a 35 homer, 15 steal season with 200 combined runs and ribbies, which has him right on the edge of the top 20 hitters on the player rater. So, are you buying into this breakout here, or do you feel like this is going to be more kind of an obvious career year when we look back at Vargas in a few years?
Yeah, I think the smart money would say that this is more of a career year rather than anything indicative of future success. I mean, he's seeing jumps in batted ball stats, right? Like his harder hit rate has leapt this year. Bat speed's really increased this year. He's still, elite in terms of his plate discipline, so that's definitely helped in terms of, hey, if he's swinging the bat a little bit better, then being more disciplined at the plate is going to help him. EVs have gone up this season, barrel rate's gone up this season. I mean, all those things would seem to indicate that there is some mechanical change that he's made this year. I mean, he is pulling the ball in the air a little bit more. Um, so, I mean, I would say next year, it'd be hard for me to believe that he's going to hit 30 homers, but something like a 25-15 season with similar runs and RBI is definitely in the cards, I think. I just don't think he's necessarily a top 20 hitter. I don't know if I'd draft him like that right now, but some people are definitely buying it. Like I mentioned in last week, I think like in my, way too early 2027 mock draft, I think he was like the third baseman taken off the board in the third round. So some people are definitely buying on it. And if you are one of those people, then I feel like there's not necessarily anything that anyone else is going to say that's going to dissuade you from taking Vargas that high.
Yeah, I was just looking at, the NFBC did a few in-season drafts and he was ADP 51. So, just after pick 50, which I think I would consider first couple of rounds or first few rounds, I think I would be hesitating, buying this high. But I did write about him a couple months ago and his breakout and, how he's gained a bunch of bat speed and he's really maximizing pulled fly balls without sacrificing any plate discipline or whiff. And it's been a couple months since I wrote that up, but pretty much everything has held up. He chases only 22-23% of the time, which is borderline elite, while still swinging in the zone about 70% of the time, which is really good as well. And yeah, he added 3, takes a bat speed 3.5 actually, while keeping his strikeout rate below 18%, and it's 19% for his career. So yeah, I feel really good about the well-rounded profile here. The batting average is not great. He's at 242 with 216 career. He does have a 245 BABIP, but he hits so many fly balls that I don't think he's ever going to be a good BABIP guy. So yeah, I think that he can be kind of a four category contributor, and then you hope that the average is just at least half decent so that it doesn't drag you down at all.
His spray chart is kind of hilarious. It's literally like everything is to left field. There's
Oh
not
yeah,
much
he's in a
else.
wow, a lot of doubles and homers down the line. He is
Yeah.
definitely tapping into that pull side.
Yep.
Going to the pitching side on the 14th, download the Adobe Acrobat. Was Jake on the SP roundup there for Clay Holmes? We call him the Adobe here at PL, but I'm going to talk about Gerrit Cole, obviously of the Yankees, who was at the Blue Jays. Took the tough luck loss in this one, but he was still great. Six innings, one earned, 5 hits, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, 9 whiffs, and a 36% CSW on 87 pitches. Super efficient. Ace is going to ace performance here. Jake noted that Cole did a really good job avoiding the heart of the zone, even though he wasn't necessarily super precise, maybe like he was at his peak in terms of locations. Jay feels like Cole is really solid right now, but until sliders get low in glove side a little more consistently with four seamers up, he sees him as, kind of 90% of peak Gerrit Cole. I'm still an ace, but not someone who's in the conversation for kind of that, top SP in baseball anymore. So yeah, where are you at on Cole? Are you comfortable as treating him as kind of a back end ace rest of the season and into next year? Or are you a little bit more worried, coming off surgery and obviously him getting up there a little bit in age?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two things you mentioned, injury and age, are for sure like a concern with Cole. I mean, he's not young; he's 35, and he lost a full season to Tommy John. I mean, I think the most notable thing to me is just that he is not that 30% strikeout guy anymore. Like he still can probably get a strikeout an inning, but the days of him, averaging 8 to 9 to 10 strikeouts a game, right? I don't think we're going to see that version of Cole anymore. But a guy who still can, get you 5, 6 strikeouts a game, um, decent ERA, decent WHIP. Yeah, I think to me that still counts as like a back end ace, like a top 15, top 20 guy. That I'd still be very comfortable rostering, even until next year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think top 15, I would consider him for sure. If he's going any later than that, I'm definitely going to be trying to get, a ton of shares. He does do a good job just, pounding the zone. He still looks really strong in strikeout minus walk rate at over 20%, even if the strikeout rate isn't pushing 30, like you said, like we expected from him in his peak. Stuff wise, he is kind of similar to the guy he was in, 2023 and 2024 pre-surgery, but not quite at those, peak Gerrit Cole levels. So yeah, I feel good about him. I think yeah, he might get hurt by the long ball every once in a while, like he's kind of known to do, and like some pitchers in Yankee Stadium do. So I think ERA might actually be his weakest category, but if it's like a low to mid threes ERA with a really solid WHIP and over a strikeout per inning, and obviously racking up lots of wins on the Yankees, I think you feel pretty good about that. So yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised with how good he's looked kind of right out of the gate coming back from the surgery. So it seems like the Yankees took the right patient approach here, and it's paying off.
Yeah, and I think one more offseason removed from surgery, 2027, kind of builds up a little bit more confidence in that arm. Not saying he's going to be elite next year, but I could definitely see him kind of improving on this year's numbers for sure.
Yeah, and he's doing a good job, getting innings under his belt that hopefully he won't be really limited too much next year. I think he should end up, over 120 between the playoffs and regular season pretty easily this year.
Yeah. All right, moving on to Saturday. Basic Instinct by Kevin O'Brien was the hitter recap article, of course, referring to Joshua Baez, who we will talk about very briefly because he had a game 3 for 4, 3 runs, 3 homers, 5 RBI. I'm sure most of you who listen to the podcast have already heard about this, so we don't really need to talk too much about it. I guess the interesting thing with Baez is that the power is not surprising. He hit 34 homers in AAA this season. And unfortunately, though, right after this game, he's played 4 more games and he's only had 1 hit in those 4. So being a rookie is a tough job. So we're going to move on from Baez. We're going to talk about Isaac Paredes instead, who went 3 for 4 with a homer, a run, and 2 RBI. Paredes got his 16th homer of the season in this game. His batting average is pretty decent this year. OBP is about the same. The unfortunate thing for him is that the slugging is 33 points down, bringing his OPS down in general. Still, he's on pace for another 20 homer season. It's not bad for Paredes, and it's not bad for the Astros. And really, I think the problem, if you want to call it that, with Paredes is that he just hasn't matched up his incredible breakout season in 2023 when he hit 31 homers for the Rays. And he's got multi positional eligibility. He's got first, second, and third as well. But frankly, he doesn't have any speed. He has 0 steals, I think, on the season, or maybe it's just one. 16 homers, as we mentioned, and kind of middling counting stats for this Astro offense that pretty much is just Yordan Alvarez, and that's kind of about it. Um, so do you think Paredes still has value in 12 teamers still? I was looking at kind of where does he rank among first, second, and third baseman, and he's probably the highest ranked in terms of third baseman. And even then, he's kind of in the late teens, early 20s there. So kind of wondering if you think it's worth even having any shares of Paredes in like a 12 teamer.
I think that he has relevance just because he's eligible at third base, and we know how weak that position can be sometimes. If he was, first base only, which it doesn't seem like he will be anytime soon, but if he was, I would have no interest. Talk about pulling home runs down the line with Miguel Vargas. That's Isaac Paredes, right? He kind of is the patron saint of that approach. And it helps him be really good from a WRC plus perspective, right? He's been above average for going on his fifth straight season, but with no speed and a mediocre batting average, it's just not the most exciting fantasy profile. And his bat speed was already not great to begin with, and it's down 2 ticks from last year to this year. So I think that can help explain some of the power loss. But he's also only striking out 14% of the time, so he does a good job, putting the ball in play and giving himself a chance to, get extra base hits. But yeah, it's not a high ceiling profile. I think 0 steals is a reasonable expectation. He's only got 2 for his career, and he's a career 241 hitter. So he's kind of at best a 3 category guy, and really it's more just home runs and RBIs. He's never had above 71 runs in a season. So yeah, I think that he's a fine like util bench back guy, but I do think that the ceiling is pretty low here.
What's kind of interesting for him is that actually his BABIP has gone up every single year since 2023, which is kind of funny. But like you mentioned, and then his strikeout rate's kind of gone down since that point too. So he's kind of taking advantage of the fact that he can hit at the Crawford boxes, but it is surprising that his average is kind of only at 260 despite a 274 BABIP. Very interesting numbers for Paredes. I just kind of wish that we could maybe see a little bit more power out of him, but that might not be the case with kind of those things that you're mentioning about bat speed.
Yeah, he does a great job walking. So, in an OBP league, I think he's kind of an underrated asset because he goes from like being a neutral in average leagues to, I think an easy plus in OBP leagues at 354, 340 career. But if you play in the standard formats, I think he's just more of a back end of your roster type guy that, if something exciting comes up, I think you can cut him and it's okay.
Yeah. All right, moving on to pitchers. Thanks to Jane Kropler for Read It and Weep. Talking about Reid Detmers, who we're going to talk about because he had a great game. 8 innings, no runs, 2 hits, no walks, and 11 strikeouts. It's been quite a season for Detmers. After spending pretty much the entirety of last season in the bullpen, this season he's had a 3.7 ERA and a career best 1.06 WHIP. Yeah, pretty solid numbers. He also has a 28.8% strikeout rate, which is the highest rate he's had as a starter. Last year he did have a higher strikeout rate, but of course he was a reliever. The trouble with Detmers, as Jake points out, historically has been his volatility. He's got a great 4-seamer slider combo, but after that, he's always kind of struggled to find that third pitch. I think early on in his career, Detmers was really known for that curveball, which just was traveling. It had so much vertical break, but he had difficulty kind of locating it well. So even though it was kind of an insane pitch, it wasn't really useful. This year, however, the curveball's been great in slightly limited use, 46.5% CSW. That's the highest mark it's ever been in his career, despite the fact that it's the lowest usage he's had his career. His changeup is also back this season after kind of retiring it last year. He's using it pretty much exclusively against righties, getting a 28% CSW against those type of batters. And yeah, it looks like he actually finally has a third pitch that he can use in his arsenal in combination with that fastball slider combo. With this kind of update to his pitch mix, do you feel like this success from Detmers is just going to continue to be good this season and beyond, or is it kind of just, hey, he found something really nice this year, but it's hard to say whether he can, replicate it for the time being.
Yeah, I think I believe in him, sticking in the starting rotation going forward for sure, which is, saying a lot given that he didn't start a single game last year. I think it might be hard to, buy in if the price for next year, just completely reflects this breakout season he's having. Like you said, though, he does have a nice, well-rounded arsenal, and the strikeout minus walk at 21.4% is really solid. And he's getting a few less whiffs than he did last year, but I think, you'd expect that for someone going from the bullpen to the rotation. So, yeah, I feel good about, considering him maybe like as a SP4, I would say. He's only got 4 wins. I'm just seeing that now in 25 starts, which is brutal. And the ERA is fine at 3.78. The strikeouts and whip are, borderline elite, which is great. But I wish he got traded. I was hoping, I have been a couple of leagues, and I was hoping he get traded at the deadline. The Angels just always seem to be in flux. They fired their pitching coach in the middle of the year, and they really struggle, I think, to develop guys sometimes. So that gives me a little bit of pause about fully buying in, but I do think that, he is going to be a solid kind of mid-round SP, next year and moving forward, hopefully.
Yeah, it is kind of annoying that through no fault of his own, he is at best a three category guy because of the Angels and just their inability to give him any sort of run support. So, uh, yeah, it would be nice to rank Detmers a little bit higher if he was to get more wins, but we kind of just know that is just not going to be happening with him.
Right. I think Nick has him 24th, it looks like, on the list, which is probably, or 23rd, actually, which I think if you're just thinking about his skills, I think that's reasonable. But the greater context, I think I'd be a little bit more tepid than that. So going to the hitting side on the 16th, the Bowers That Be by Kyle Stanzel was the hitter recap. We've talked a lot about Jake Bowers lately, and he's still being awesome. So I'm going to instead talk about someone who's also been great, and that's Matt Olson, first baseman, obviously for Atlanta. He was 1 for 3 with a combo meal: homer, a run, 3 RBI, and a walk and a steal. And Matt Olson is leading the league in extra base hits this year. He's having a quietly fantastic season. Hit a 3-run homer, go ahead in the 7th inning to give Atlanta the win, and he has is up to now 36 homers, and at that point it was 8 in his last 15 games. So Matt Olson's been fantastic all year. He's kind of been a steady power guy, for the last, I don't know, almost decade in fantasy, with some kind of cliffs and valleys, but he's right up there with, I think, Ben Rice as the best first baseman this season. So is he kind of topping the list there for you, Matt Olson, or where do you think about him in the first base landscape right now?
Yeah, I think it'd be very difficult for anyone to not rank Matt Olson as first base, as the best first baseman right now. And he's had this knock. I mean, again, the last 2 seasons he hasn't hit 30 homers, so people are like, oh, the power's kind of gone, especially after that 50 plus homer year he had the year before. Uh, but he could definitely get to 40, mid 40s this year. I think it's definitely not impossible. He's at 36 right now. And he plays for a really good Atlanta team that allows him to get a bunch of counting stats as well. So yeah, even though I think Ben Rice has had his breakout season this year, yeah, for me, I think Olson, even though he's going into his age 33 season next year, to me, it just seems like he is going to be the best first baseman. I mean, especially after the fall off that we've seen from Vlad, that we've seen from Devers. Pete Alonso's been really solid in Baltimore, but maybe not to the heights that we've seen from Olson. So to me, I think if you're going to handicap it between Olson and Rice, I think I'd take Olson right now.
Yeah, I think I would too. Rice has really struggled the last couple of months, at least by his standards, and we've just seen how vulnerable the Yankees' offense is without Judge. So, yeah, Olson is super stable. He's also, an Iron Man. He's played 162 games. That's 4 seasons in a row now, and I think he's got a chance to do it this year too. So he'll be out there every single day. Obviously, with someone like Marcus Semien, we bought into that, and eventually it falls off. But I think, at first base, he's shown the demonstrated ability to stay on the field and just maximize his counting stats while being fine in the average department. So, yeah, I think I see him as my probably first baseman one next year. I think Rice will probably get pushed ahead of him just because, Yankees and younger guy who could conceivably keep improving. But yeah, Olson has done nothing but rake. So yeah, it's been an awesome season for him.
Yeah, what's probably important too is that we just haven't seen a drop off from Olson. I mean, obviously we shouldn't. He's hitting more homers this year, but we haven't seen a drop off from him in terms of the batted ball kind of metrics. And so I think when we take that to account, like he still looks as good as ever, And there's, for now, knock on wood, no reason to believe that he's going to lose that next season.
Yeah, it looks like his strikeout rate is about in line with his career average, but his swinging strike rate is actually on pace to be the lowest since his, super tiny sample as a rookie. So if anything, he's actually, improving a little bit in that department. Going to the pitching side on the 16th, Yuri the Hatchet was Nick's SP roundup for Yuri Perez, who keeps shoving, but someone else really shoved on this day too, and has just been doing that pretty much every start for like the last 4 to 6 weeks, and that's Noah Cameron of the Royals. He was at the Angels in this one, took advantage of an easier matchup, got the win in a complete game shutout. Don't see a lot of those these days. 9 scoreless innings with 1 hit, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts, 21 whiffs, and a 32% CSW on 115 pitches. So really let him go deep and finish this one off. Another fantastic outing from Noah Cameron. Earned the gallows pole with the shutout and just 1 hit in the seventh, which was a weak hit. And we just keep riding Noah Cameron, who's been an absolute workhorse lately. Tigers and Jays are his upcoming matchups. And he's just showing, really nice pitchability skills as a lefty, only 25% fastball, sitting at 93, and just spotting all of his secondaries in all the right places. So, yeah, Noah Cameron, he was kind of an unheralded, kind of back end top 100 prospect, but we're almost 50 starts into his career, and he's got a 3.58 ERA, a 1.16 whip, and a 21% K rate. And those are really solid numbers. Do you see him as a dependable Toby despite, the really rough first half this year? Or do you think he's more just kind of in a groove and expect things to, fall off at some point?
Yeah, I mean, I think what works for Cameron is the fact that his changeup is really solid. It's got a 29.2% CSW. It's his second most used pitch, right behind the four seamer. And I mean, that's kind of just that's been the, I don't know, sort of bread and butter for how we want to grade lefties nowadays, right? Do they have a good changeup? He does, but he kind of couples it with two really good fastballs and the four seamer and the cutter as well that are also really good at getting strikes. And then this curveball is really good at stealing strikes, getting called strikes. So he's just really good at throwing strikes, which is, maybe a too simplified way of saying it, but that really works well in being efficient. That's how he's able to get to 9 innings in only, I guess it was 115 pitches. So maybe you want to watch out for that start against the Tigers. But nonetheless, I mean, I think he's kind of proven that he at least is able to, use his pitch mix effectively. And then that change up, 8 whiffs in this start, which is really solid out of 24 thrown. So he's using that very well in his arsenal to get strikes. And yeah, it's nice to see it working for him. I don't know if I'd say I was a big believer in Cameron, but I was kind of hoping to get him in some places this year. Managed to grab him in some places, although he kind of ended up being a little bit more of a streamer due to some of his issues earlier in the season. But yeah, it's nice to see him on this run of basically like 5-6 starts where it's been pretty solid.
Yeah, he's been pretty much untouchable. He had a rough one before this one against the Dodgers, but then before that, it was 8 innings of 1 run ball against the Twins, and then 8 scoreless again against the Twins. So I guess you've been getting a good look at Noah Cameron really executing lately. Like you said, it is the changeup is a great offering for him, and it kind of helps him get be a platoon neutral guy. Some lefties might struggle against righties, and that can put them in the bullpen. But Cameron's changeup, basically has him with no platoon splits for his career, and it's his big swing and miss offering against righties. So he's got a 17% swing strike rate on the changeup this year against righties. And then he's able to use his slider really effectively as the whiff pitch against lefties. He throws it a quarter at a time, 18% swing strike rate. So he's not a huge whiff guy, but he has enough of a put away pitch, I think, against hitters of both handedness that it feels reliable. I think that the ratios we've seen from him that so far, I think that the ERA of the career at 3.6, I think is maybe a touch lower than what I'd expect going forward, but he's just shown an ability to stay on the field and then just consistently execute and, kind of eat innings. So I think that, yeah, he's just a really reliable starter. I think if the price starts to push maybe like inside the top 150, I'd be out, but, pick 200, I think he's a really enticing option.
Yeah, the only knock against him is the fact that he pitches in Kaufman, which weirdly enough just has the Statcast park factor of being bad for strikeouts, which is just such a
Huh.
funny thing.
Yeah, that's weird.
So it's not to say that that 21.7% strikeout rate isn't real. I would say that's maybe commensurate to like his level of his pitching,
Mhm.
but he does pitch in a park that isn't necessarily the greatest for pitchers, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, and they just moved the fences in too, right? So that probably doesn't help in terms of run scoring environment either.
No, yeah. All right, moving on to Monday. Hellman's Best by Ryan Amore was the hitter recap article. We're going to talk about Willson Contreras instead. I almost best referring to Kobe Mayo, but with Contreras, 2 for 4 with a double, homer, 2 runs, an RBI, and a walk. He hit his career best 25th home run off a super from Zach Littell while leading off the fifth, and he hit it at 89.9 miles an hour. So that thing kind of was a little bit of a wall scraper. But yeah, Contreras has pretty quietly had a decent season this year. Of course, he was now he's in Boston. He used to be a catcher. Now he only plays first base, so he could easily be lost in some of that shuffle. But he's actually fifth in baseball in OPS with a 927. He's behind Jordan, Otani, PCA, and Wood, and then it's Willson Contreras, and one of those names does not belong, and then that would be Contreras, I guess. Um, yeah, weirdly enough, though, I mean, this is maybe an example of how real life baseball does not match fantasy baseball, because you'd think with the 927 OPS, he'd be in that conversation with Matt Olson, with Pete Alonso as like the best first baseman. Based on the player rater, he is only 11th, despite these career numbers in homers, pretty decent counting stats as well. But unfortunately, there's just a lot of other really solid dudes playing first base who can hit homers, but maybe just don't have the ratios that Willson has. So, I don't know. With all those kind of numbers taken into account, do you think 11th just makes sense for Contreras in terms of first base? Is first base just seriously that good, where a guy with the fifth best OPS is actually kind of looking on the outside of the top 10?
Yeah, I think that that just tells you a lot about how good the position is. Two of those guys are, catchers, Ben Rice, Liam Hicks. Ben Rice won't be catcher next year, so I guess, you just get rid of Hicks and then he's 10th. And it's also very tight, right? He's way ahead of Freddie Freeman in 12th by a few bucks, but then from 11th, Contreras is at $21.4 in 12-team leagues. And then you go all the way up to third, Sal Stewart's at 27. So it's like a pretty tight, group of guys there, besides Ben Rice and Matt Olson. So yeah, I think it's a little surprising, but it just tells you how deep the position is. Also, Wilson Contreras just gets hit by a ton of pitches, as we know from him, starting beef with a lot of pitchers around the league. So his on base percentage, it obviously goes into his OPS, is exceptional pretty much every season, even though he walks at kind of a league average rate. So that's something that you're not going to necessarily get reflected in fantasy value. And then just a little bit, not really much speed, single digit, less than 6 bags every year. But yeah, it's been a great breakout season, and it's nice to see, his bat really emerging as he's, that doesn't have that really demanding responsibility of catching every, most games.
Yeah, I wish I could figure out how many hits he's banging off the monster, because last season with St. Louis, 257 average, this year 284. He went from a 319 BABIP to a 346 BABIP. So, yeah, just kind of being a righty in Fenway pays its dividends. We kind of saw that with Alex Bregman last year. So it's nice to see this little bit of a resurgence from Contreras. And I do think kind of being able to play half your games in Fenway is pretty useful for a guy like Contreras, who does not have a ton of elite power.
Yeah, he's got about the same walk and strikeout rates home versus road, but he's got a 408 BABIP at home and a 283 BABIP on the road. So he's got almost a 200-point OPS gap between home and road and an 80-point batting average gap. So clearly he is taking advantage of the monster and just playing it Fenway.
Yeah. All right, moving on to pitching. Kent Rock, man, was the SP roundup article. I'll be referring to Kent Emmanuel, who unfortunately was sent down after the start. We're going to talk about Blake Snell of the Dodgers, because as you mentioned, the rich keep on getting richer. This was Blake Snell's second start after going back from the injury list. He had a great start in his first start back, and this one was in Colorado. So maybe there's some hesitation with starting Blake Snell here, but he was really solid. 6 innings, 1 run, 2 hits, 3 walks, and 5 strikeouts. What worked for him? Well, it was his patented Blake Snell blueprint against the righties. Fastballs up, changeups down. Slider was really good against the lefties as well. Got 5 whiffs on 11 thrown there. And I was looking, where did Snell go in my too early 2027 mock, and he went in the 10th round. So, we're talking pick 111, 112, somewhere around there. And frankly, I think maybe part of that is because of the fact that you're just not going to get a full season out of Snell. He has not had a full season since 2023. So with that in mind, do you think 10th round's like kind of around the right price for Snell, even with these really solid numbers that we would expect from him day in and day out?
It sounds about right to me in a shallower league. I think if it was a deeper league I was playing in, like a 15-teamer, I'd have to push Snell down my board a little bit just because of how much worse the replacement level is. I mean, with this start, he just cleared 200 innings pitched in his last 3 seasons, right? So he's got really serious durability issues. And the Dodgers, they take their time with their injured pitchers because they can afford to. So yeah, I think in a shallower league where I feel comfortable taking more shots with my pitching, I would do that. But it really depends on the format. And maybe in a playoffs league for head to head versus roto, I'd feel more interested because I feel like Blake Snell is more likely to be healthy in September than he is in May or June because the Dodgers want him at his best heading into their own playoffs. So maybe that's a little bit of a reach, but that's kind of how I'm thinking about my interest in him.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, the roto versus head to head conversation there, because yeah, there's definitely guys who you feel like they're better suited for roto because they just hit in bunches. I mean, I think of like Colson Montgomery, great roto player this season, really bad head to head player. Blake Snell, very interesting in terms of head to head playoffs because yeah, he's more likely going to be pitching in September rather than in June because the Dodgers are just the Dodgers.
Yeah, and also IL versus no IL, NFBC. I just got finished holding O'Neal Cruz in both of my OCs for over 2 months, and I
Wow,
didn't
shout
think
out.
about dropping him, but it was definitely a challenge at times, trying to figure out other people to cut, and it probably caused me to cut some people who ended up doing pretty well. So it's challenging in those no IL leagues too.
Yeah.
Onto the 18th, excuse me, Mitchell Madness for Garrett Mitchell's Great Day by Griffey Geist was a hitter recap. But I'm going to be talking about Fernando Tatis Jr., who just keeps raking 2 for 5 in this one with 2 homers and 3 RBI. And yes, Tatis was pretty much as dynamic as it gets in this one. He robbed a go-ahead grand slam from Francisco Lindor and had 2 homers of his own. The 2 homers came against the lefty Zach Thornton of the Mets. Hit 104 and 113, one a little shorter at 379, but the other one an absolute no doubter at 452. So Tatis, the homer drought to start the season was, well chronicled. Everyone knew about it, but he is just absolutely turning it on down the stretch here. He's hitting 280 and he's up to 15 homers and 28 steals now. Kind of a back end first round, early second round guy in most leagues this year. Do you feel like he has re-earned that status despite his, really, really slow start to the season? Or are you, still pretty concerned about that and have him more as kind of second, third round guy?
I don't think I'd be taking him in the first round. I think early second is when I start thinking about him, mainly because that second base eligibility, right? That's pretty huge. Um, but when a guy doesn't hit a homer for like 2 months, you just like you guys kind of wonder like, how consistent can he really be in day out? And I mean, yeah, it's been a really solid season since that point. Like the stats that you mentioned. But yeah, I think I'd let other people take him first. I would probably try to find someone maybe a little bit more reliable as my first round pick rather than grabbing someone like Tatis.
Yeah, I think I'm mostly with you. I would think about him maybe. I'd have to look at it, but maybe like pick 12. Like the last pick of the first round, early second round. I do think you can't just ignore the homerless drought just because it happened in the first half of the season and he finished strong, right? Obviously, it's nice when guys finish strong, but I think people can buy into those narratives too much sometimes. We know how bad PCA was in the second half last year, and he's had a fantastic season, right? Same thing with James Wood. So yeah, this is kind of the inverse of that, but I don't think that you can just take Tatis's pace from like June 1st till the rest of the season and extrapolate that over a full season and expect that for 2027. So I think you got to be careful, but he is, seeming like an all categories contributor, even if he's more of a 20 to 25 homer guy.
Yeah, and especially if you're a guy who doesn't draft pitchers early, which feels like it's most people who pay attention to pitcher list, then maybe yeah, there's maybe an argument to go for him instead of like maybe one of the other first basemen or something like that. If you just want to fill that second base spot, but maybe have the eligibility to switch to an outfield, I could definitely see value in him just because of that positional eligibility. That could drive you to pick him a little bit earlier.
Right. And that's something he didn't have this year. And he was still almost, right on the edge of the first round. So, clearly there is always a lot of interest in him. Onto the pitching side, Klassen's peak was Nick's SP roundup for George Klassen. I'm going to be talking about though someone who had a rough day at the office and hasn't had really that many of them this year. That's Nick Martinez of the Rays. He was against the Blue Jays in this one and took the loss with a tough one. 3 2/3, 6 earned, 9 hits, 2 walks, and 5 strikeouts, 6 whiffs, and 30% CSW on 82 pitches. Martinez right around 3, but this is his third 6 earned outing of the year, which is a bummer. It was just bad BABIP luck here for the most part. He only got 6 outs on 15 balls in play, and all we can do is just hope that he rebounds next time out, which he deserves that patience from us, just given how many great starts he's had this year. And would it be like one more bad outing, pretty bad outing for you consider dropping or benching Martinez? Are you already dropping, or is he kind of, off your radar because of the low K ceiling?
Yeah, I'm just looking at his stats. I'm kind of surprised in how decent his ratios are. Um, but if I'm being honest, Nick Martinez is probably one of the first guys to go from my team. If I was like, let's just say I was making a decision, do I pick up Cade Anderson? Yeah, I'm dropping Martinez for him immediately, right? And I think there's a ton of other pitchers who had interesting streaming starts that might be worth more than Martinez, just maybe because of the strikeouts. I mean, what's been impressive for him has probably been the wins this year. 12 wins on the season, thanks to playing for the league best Rays. But yeah, I think the ratios are impressive that he's been able to keep them down. But I think that strikeout number is just it's not great. And I think there's just other players who just in one stream could be as good as Martinez, if not better, because they can get more strikeouts.
Yeah, I mean, the 14.5% strikeout rate is just crazy. It does feel like he's just kind of teetering on the edge of, more outings like this. I'm kind of close to dropping him. I have him in kind of like my shallowest league, I would say. I have a claim in for Cade Anderson to drop Jake Bennett, right? But then I think Martinez is probably the next guy to go after that. So I'm close to, getting ready to cut loose, but I think, yeah, Tampa, great development situation, great home park, has me, willing to stay in a little longer. And yeah, the one thing that has been kind of always his best pitch, and the Rays have really maximized it, is the changeup. I was throwing it over a quarter of the time. And I think the Orioles were just playing the Rays, and they were talking about how the Rays throw more right on right, or same-handed changeups than any team in the league. And Martinez has been throwing it, to lefties really effectively his whole career. But this year he's throwing it a lot against righties too, 23.6% of the time. And it's getting a lot of whiffs, 17% swing strike rate. So yeah, I think that they've, just kind of encouraged him to really focus on the pitches that make him, most effective. So I think he's made some real improvements here, but the ceiling is just low from the strikeout rate perspective. So yeah, I'm definitely a little nervous for him going forward, but I'm willing to give him, another chance.
Yeah, definitely a case of maybe better real life pitcher than fantasy pitcher, right? And I think that's just because the strikeouts are just not there for him. All right, moving on to Wednesday. Yandy just yeeted it out was the hitter recap article from Ben Solo, of course, talking about Yandy Diaz, who hit a homer in his game on Wednesday. But we're going to talk about a different player, Andres Chaparro of the Nationals. 3 for 4 with a double, a homer, 3 runs, and 3 RBI. If you didn't know who Chaparro was, congratulations, because I didn't either. But he's been doing really well in Washington, D.C. after the trade of Luis Garcia Jr. to the Yankees. Nationals offense has also been solid since that point. But yeah, his big game yesterday elevated his season line to 250, 360, and 543 with 8 homers in 136 plate appearances. So, hey, you want to extrapolate that? That's a 30 homer pace right there in a full season. He's also improved his bat speed by about 1 mile an hour over the past 2 seasons, so he is showing some improvement. It's now well above average 74.5 miles an hour, so there's definitely some fire to the smoke here. And yeah, it's showing up in his batted ball data with 3 balls over 104 miles an hour in this game on Wednesday. I think the problem with Chaparro is just the fact that he is not getting everyday playing time. He's still probably playing every 3 to 4 games, missing 1 out of every 4 essentially. So, not really a play, I think, in 12 teamers. But assuming he's kind of continuing on this pretty decent streak, do you think he's kind of worth a pickup in 15 teamers right now, or is it just the fact that he doesn't get everyday play doesn't really even make him worth considering in those types of leagues?
Yeah, I think if you're looking to stream a hot hand, I could understand going for him. But yeah, it does seem like at best he's going to play like 3 out of every 4 games. I don't see why he can't displace Jorby Vivas, as who roster resource has as the not starting DH right now. I think that Chaparro could get in there pretty easily. But Abby Ortiz has been playing first base, against all the righties, and he's doing really well. So I don't think he's going anywhere. But yeah, they have a 7 game week next week, all at home against the Rockies and Marlins. So not the should be pretty good hitting matchups. So yeah, I think if you want to see how he does in the week, you're looking for power. I'm okay with that. I do think that the strikeout rate improvement that he's showing, it's like 30% last year to 23% this year, but he hasn't improved his swing strike rate at all. It's actually gone up a little bit. So I think that's maybe a little bit misleading. But yeah, he's tapping into some power. So I think if you need that, I think yeah, give it a shot if you have an easy drop or someone going on the aisle and you have a weakness at the corners.
Definitely a case of just like it's that kind of part of the season where sometimes a live bat is all you need in fantasy. So yeah, if Chaparro was available in your leagues, and you just need some hits or some power, definitely not a bad choice there.
Yeah, and he's listened to the pull side really well too. So, that tells me that the power is, something that he's trying to tap into.
Yeah. All right, moving on to pitchers. Heater or Nola from Nick Pollock, of course, referring to Aaron Nola, who is just on a little bit of a heater, actually. Really solid. A couple games from Nola. But we're going to talk about Cade Cavalli of the Nats. So, yeah, two Nats on this one. Wow, did not actually plan that out. But got the win against Texas. 6 innings, no earned runs, 3 hits, 1 walk, and 11 strikeouts. It's been the first full season for Cavalli. He had 10 starts last year. And yeah, he's looking really good. 3.22 ERA, 1.22 whip, 162 strikeouts in 142 innings. He's especially been quite impressive in those last 2 starts with double-digit strikeouts and is on an 8-game quality start streak. The interesting thing to see in his pitches, specifically in the past 2 games, is that his velocity has been up. Is basically across the board, like breaking pitches, fastballs, everything is up like 1 to 2 ticks. Although weirdly in this start, his four seam was actually back to where it's been over for the course of the season. Curveball and sleeper though were really good weapons this start. Both had over 40% CSW, and both were the second and third most used pitch that he had. So yeah, really solid game from Cavalli, kind of showing what he could do. Yes, he was in Texas, so it's a little bit of a better uh, stadium for pitchers. But nonetheless, really good outing from him. So I guess the question is, do you buy the breakout from Cavalli? I think he's like ranked 22nd in Knicks rankings right now. And while that feels high for a guy who I think, prior to this season was probably getting drafted after the 10th round, it feels like with that high of a ranking, this guy is like a shoe-in to be a top 10 round pick now.
Yeah, I think I do believe it at this, level that he's executing right now with increased velocity. His four seam historically has been a little bit hittable with the breaking balls really being, his best offerings, but obviously they're going to become a little bit less hittable if he's, sitting 97, 98 instead of 95, 96. So yeah, I feel good about him. Rest of the season. The Nats have always been kind of a bad defensive team, but they're also moving CJ Abrams off a shortstop. So maybe with Nunez at shortstop next year and Abrams at second base, the infield will be a little bit better defensively to kind of help some of his whip issues. So yeah, I think I am buying into the breakout overall. If he's going in like the top 100 next year because he's just having an insanely good second half, I think I might have to pump the brakes on that a little bit just because of the whip concerns. And I don't know if the Nats are really going to provide as many wins as they have this year for him. But the breaking balls are great. He's his slider and curveball, he throws them both, or I think sweeper, I guess sweeper and curveball, he throws them both really hard, but they get a ton of drop and sweep, for the velocity that they come in at. So I think they're great with options. And he started to mix in a cutter a little bit more, in the last couple of months, which is kind of a nice bridge between the fastball and the breaking ball. So yeah, he's really rounding into kind of a nice 6 pitch guy. So yeah, I am a believer generally in the breakout, but I don't know if I'd, consider him an SP2 like maybe his recent results reflect.
Yeah, what's probably impressive to me is just the consistency. Like you mentioned, it's likely that the Nats aren't going to win as many games as they did this year, but 15 quality starts out of 27 is a very impressive number for Cavalli. And uh, the one thing I maybe was a little bit worried about was just how deep he was going to go this season. He's at 142 innings this year. He has 27 starts. Obviously, those 15 quality starts means that he's going a little bit deeper into games as well. But it's actually kind of cool that at the tail end of the season that we're seeing this velocity increase. So clearly he has the stamina to kind of keep going for a little bit. And we are not going to see the drop off at the end of the season like we might see from some other young pitchers.
Yeah, and he's a big guy, hopefully he's got a durable frame that, can handle that kind of 180 plus inning workload.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for player performances. Moving on to streamers. How are we looking there this week?
Yeah, so to recap from 2 weeks ago, it was 1 win and 2 losses to go to 500 on the year. So 22 wins, 15 pushes, and 22 losses on the streams. Hayden Wisniewski was a loss. He gave it back in his second start. Keter Montero was a win, even though he didn't have any strikeouts. He got 6 1/3 scoreless innings in a win. Gabriel Hughes was a loss with 2 bad starts. Last week's guys, still finishing up. Luis Castillo, rough first start. Hayden Wisniewski has not gone yet. Martin Perez, bad first start. Grant Holmes went today, very solid. Or sorry, no, not Grant Holmes. Clay Holmes was the streamer here. He had a decent start, and Kyle Lee, he had a good first start. We'll see how the second one goes. This week, we have a bunch of lefties and one righty. The righty's Tyler Mahle, 41% Yahoo, 68% CBS. Check the schedule on this one. He might go this weekend, but if he does not, it could be 2 home starts against the Dodgers and Colorado. Dodgers are good, but not really as good as they have been in past years and earlier this year. So I don't think you need to avoid them at all costs. And he's got 3 earned runs and a 19-3 K to walk and 3 starts since the trade. Next one's Anthony Kay of the White Sox, 17% Yahoo, 29% CBS. He gets 1 home start against Texas. He hasn't given up more than 3 earned runs in any start since June 17th, and he's got 3 quality starts in his last 4 with a 17-4 K to walk, and he's throwing hard. He's sitting like 96, 96 and a half. So that's a good option there for I think all formats. Andrew Alvarez of the Nats is the next one, 7% Yahoo, 10% CBS. He likely gets 2 home starts against Colorado and Miami. Quality starts aren't likely with him, but he's only given up more than 3 earned once in his 18 appearances. So I think wins and maybe strikeouts, you could look at him. And then lastly, Zach Thornton of the Mets, 23% Yahoo, 54% CBS. Higher rostered, but tougher matchups. 2 home starts against Milwaukee and Houston. Low strikeout ceiling, but he's been racking up innings since he got called up. So a good quality starts option, I think.
Yeah, I guess with Thornton, the other thing to note, he's pitching at home, so a little bit better of a pitcher's park. And then with Alvarez, yeah, it's love that it's Rocky Road essentially, so that'll be a good matchup for him. So even though he got the low rostership rate, that's a really good. At least like if you're in a daily league, that might be a pretty solid like one game pickup. So
Yeah,
yeah,
cheap win
Molly,
type of thing. I think he's a good option.
yeah, especially with how good the Nats have been, as we kind of discussed. Um, Molly, it's kind of funny. He faced the Twins earlier this week, and it was kind of the opposite of a revenge game where he did not get the win. But um, nonetheless, yeah, even though the Dodgers one is scary, again, Rocky Road. So daily league, I think it'd be nice if you're able to get a pickup on Molly.
Right. If you can avoid the Dodgers start, I would say do that. But if you have to get him in for the whole week, the Dodgers, I think it's been like the last 2 months or so, they've kind of just been an average to slightly below average offense. So I don't think that's what they're going to be going forward, but I don't think you have to treat them as, an absolute do not start like maybe you have to do in other times in the past.
Yeah, they were just like one on an 8 game losing streak just a couple weeks ago or something like that. So yeah, it definitely and Atlanta's good too, right? So it's not
Yeah.
like it's a automatic win if you're facing the Dodgers.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode, This Week in Fantasy Baseball. Again, you can find us on Twitter at ThisWeekPL. Send us your comments and questions at thisweekplpod@gmail.com. You can find myself on Twitter at the John Cuh. You can find Patrick at pfitzgerald_99. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the Pitcherless podcast feed on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you listen to your podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review if you enjoy the show. Lastly, sign up for Pitcherless Pro. By doing so, you can join us in the Discord, get advice from all the fantasy experts and writers over there. That's all for this week. We'll be back next week with another episode of This Week in Fantasy Baseball. For Patrick, I'm John. We'll see you in the next one. Later, everyone.